Bullies knocked down the new boy in the hallway, not knowing he's a state karate champion. The shove came without warning. Marcus Chen's body hit the polished floor of Lincoln High with a sickening thud that echoed through the crowded hallway like a gunshot. Books exploded across the marble surface. 200 students stood frozen, phones appearing in hands, ready to capture what everyone assumed would be another routine humiliation. "Welcome to Lincoln, nobody," sneered Trent Walker, captain of the wrestling team, his voice dripping with contempt that made several freshmen flinch. Marcus lay there for 3 seconds that felt like eternity. Then he rose slowly, methodically collecting his scattered belongings with movements so controlled they seemed almost rehearsive. His dark eyes swept across the faces in the crowd, not with fear or embarrassment, but with something else entirely. Something that made Trent's friend Jake shift uncomfortably. "Cat got your tongue, transfer boy?" Jake laughed nervously, the sound hollow in the suddenly tense air. Marcus said nothing. He simply brushed off his worn jeans, picked up his backpack with its faded California State Championship sticker facing the lockers where only the most observant would notice, and walked away. His footsteps were silent. His breathing steady. His posture perfectly balanced in a way that spoke of years of discipline most teenagers couldn't comprehend. What Trent Walker didn't know was that Marcus Chen wasn't just any transfer student. At 17, he had survived something far worse than high school bullies. And in exactly 2 weeks, Trent would discover he had just declared war on someone who understood violence in ways that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Marcus had arrived at Lincoln High 3 days earlier, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and secrets he couldn't share. His mother had moved them to this small Colorado town after the incident in Sacramento, desperate for a fresh start somewhere nobody knew their story. Somewhere the news cameras couldn't find them. The morning of the assault started ordinarily enough. Marcus woke at 5 a.m., a habit ingrained from years of training. While other students slept, he practiced kata in the tiny garage of their rental house, his movements flowing like water, each strike powerful enough to break bone but controlled enough to stop a millimeter from impact. His younger sister Emma watched from the doorway, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit. "Are you going to tell them?" she asked quietly. "Tell them what?" Marcus replied, though he knew exactly what she meant. "That you're not like them. That you're different." Marcus stopped mid-kick, his leg frozen in perfect extension. "Being different is what got us here, Em. This time, I'm just going to be invisible." But invisibility proved impossible when your father was a decorated police officer who died stopping a school shooting, and your grief was written in every controlled movement you made. Lincoln High's social hierarchy was brutal in its simplicity. Trent Walker ruled the top through a combination of athletic prowess, family money, and calculated intimidation. His father owned half the businesses in town. His uncle was the police chief. And his carefully cultivated reputation made even teachers think twice before challenging him. The collision in the hallway wasn't random. Trent had noticed Marcus immediately, the quiet kid who ate alone, never spoke in class, and somehow radiated an intensity that irritated him. New students were supposed to seek approval, to understand their place in the pecking order. Marcus Chen had committed the unforgivable sin of not caring. "Did you see his face?" Trent told his crew at lunch, surrounded by followers who laughed at every word. Didn't even fight back. Didn't cry. Just took it like the coward he is. Sarah Martinez, sitting 2 tables away with her sketchbook, had seen something different. She'd watched Marcus fall and noticed the way he'd rolled, distributing impact across his body like someone trained to take hits. She'd seen his eyes scan the hallway, cataloging exits and threats with military precision. And she'd noticed the small scar on his knuckle that looked suspiciously like the kind you get from breaking boards. Or breaking faces. By Friday afternoon, Trent had escalated. Marcus found his locker vandalized with spray paint. "Go back where you came from." His gym clothes had been shredded. Anonymous texts flooded his phone with threats and racist slurs that made his jaw tighten but never made him respond. In chemistry class, Mr. Peterson paired Marcus with Sarah for a lab project. She studied him carefully as they set up their equipment, noting the way his hands moved with practiced efficiency, the way he anticipated her movements like someone used to reading body language. "You're not what you seem," she said quietly, measuring chemicals with exaggerated focus. Marcus didn't look up. Nobody ever is. Trent's going to keep pushing. He always does. Last year, there was a kid named David who stood up to him. They found David's bike in pieces. His scholarship application mysteriously disappeared. He transferred before Christmas. Why are you telling me this? Sarah finally met his eyes. Because you're different from David. You're not scared. And that makes me think either you're incredibly stupid, or you know something we don't. Marcus smiled for the first time since arriving at Lincoln High. It wasn't a happy smile. Maybe both. That evening, Marcus sat in his room surrounded by documents his mother thought he'd thrown away. Police reports about his father's death. News articles about the shooter who'd been stopped. Therapy notes about trauma and survivor's guilt and the anger that burned inside him like a furnace he could never fully extinguish. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, tomorrow. Parking lot. 3 p.m. Time to learn your place. Marcus screenshot the message and added it to a folder labeled simply Evidence. Then he made a call to a number he'd memorized, but hoped never to use. Sensei Chen speaking. The voice was weathered, authoritative. It's Marcus. I need to know, if someone pushes me and I defend myself, how much trouble am I in? A long pause. Marcus, you're a third-degree black belt. You're not registered as a weapon, but you know what you're capable of. If you hurt someone, even in self-defense, given your history. I know, Marcus interrupted. I just need to be sure I understand the line. The line, his sensei said carefully, is thinner than you think. And once you cross it, there's no going back. Marcus ended the call and stared at his hands. The same hands that had mastered kata at age 8. The same hands that had held his father while he bled out on a high school cafeteria floor, whispering that everything would be okay even though they both knew it wouldn't be. Trent Walker thought he was picking on some quiet transfer kid. He had no idea he was provoking someone who understood violence not as a tool of dominance, but as a language he'd been forced to learn too young and speak too well. If you're enjoying this story of courage against cruelty, subscribe to our channel because what happens next will show you that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of silence that precedes storms. Marcus woke before dawn, his body already tense with anticipation of what the day would bring. He went through his morning routine mechanically, stretching, meditation, kata, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating angles and outcomes like a chess player 3 moves ahead. At breakfast, his mother noticed the tension in his shoulders. Marcus, is everything okay at school? Fine, Mom. Just adjusting. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth would terrify her. She'd already lost her husband to violence. He wouldn't make her lose sleep worrying about her son. Emma wasn't fooled. The bad kids are being mean to him, she announced through a mouthful of cereal. Their mother's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Marcus. It's nothing. Just typical new kid stuff. I'm handling it. Handling it how? Her voice carried the weight of every parent who'd ever feared their child would inherit trauma like a genetic disease. Marcus met her eyes steadily. The right way. I promise. The parking lot confrontation was scheduled for 3 p.m., but Trent made sure the entire school knew about it by noon. Text messages spread like wildfire. Social media posts promised epic beatdown, with dozens of fire emojis. By lunch, even teachers had heard whispers of something happening after school, though none seemed inclined to intervene. Sarah found Marcus in the library during study hall, pretending to read a physics textbook while actually reviewing security camera angles he'd memorized over the past week. You don't have to do this, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. You could tell Principal Morrison. Or just not show up. Nobody would blame you. Wouldn't they? Marcus closed his book. What happened to David when he didn't fight back? David wasn't like you. What makes you think I'm different? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him a screenshot from a martial arts forum she'd found after 3 hours of detective work. Because Marcus Chen from Sacramento isn't exactly a common name. And when you pair it with state championship and police officer's son, you start finding interesting stories. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. You've been researching me. Someone had to. Marcus, if you're who I think you are, you can't fight Trent. You'll destroy him, and then what? You think his uncle the police chief won't bury you? You think this town will side with the Asian transfer kid over the hometown wrestling star? The words hit harder than Trent's shove ever could because they were true. Marcus had lived this pattern before. Different town, same prejudices, identical willingness to blame the outsider. So what do you suggest? His voice was quiet, dangerous. Let him keep pushing until someone gets seriously hurt? I suggest you do what you're actually good at. You're not just a fighter, Marcus. Your father trained you to document, to build cases, to think strategically. She leaned forward. Fight Trent, and you lose even if you win. Outsmart him, and you might actually change something. At 2:45 p.m., Marcus walked toward the parking lot with his phone recording in his jacket pocket. He'd positioned it carefully so the audio would capture everything clearly. Colorado was a one-party consent state. His father had taught him that years ago. Trent waited with his entire crew. Jake and Tyler flanked him like bodyguards. Madison, Trent's girlfriend, held her phone up, already streaming live to her 3,000 followers. At least 40 students formed a loose circle, hungry for entertainment that would give them something to talk about for weeks. "Glad you showed up," Trent called out, cracking his knuckles theatrically. "Thought maybe you'd run home to mommy." Marcus stopped 10 feet away, hands relaxed at his sides, weight balanced. "I'm here. What do you want?" "What do I want?" Trent laughed, playing to his audience. "I want you to understand how things work at Lincoln High. See, there's a hierarchy here. And little transfer students who don't show proper respect." He stepped closer. "They need to be taught their place." "And what place is that?" Marcus's voice carried clearly, captured perfectly by his hidden recording. "At the bottom. Where people like you belong." The crowd murmured. Several students looked uncomfortable with how explicitly racist Trent's words had become, but nobody spoke up. Nobody ever did. "People like me," Marcus repeated calmly. "You mean transfer students? Or did you mean something else?" Trent's face reddened. "I mean people who don't belong. Who come into our town, our school, and think they can just ignore how things work." "I see." Marcus pulled out his phone, making a show of checking something. "So to be clear, you're saying that because I'm new here, and because of who I am, I deserve to be physically assaulted and intimidated until I leave?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Trent was too angry to notice the trap closing. "And if you don't like it, maybe you should go back to California. Or better yet, back to wherever your family originally." He didn't finish the sentence. Marcus had moved. But not the way anyone expected. Instead of attacking, Marcus had stepped backward, creating more distance, his phone now openly recording everything. "Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure I understood your position correctly." Trent froze, confused by the sudden shift in dynamics. "What are you doing?" "Documenting. My father was a police officer. He taught me that evidence beats violence every time." Marcus's voice remained steady even as his heart hammered. "You've just admitted on camera, in front of 40 witnesses, that you intend to assault me because of my race and origin. That's a hate crime, Trent. Federal charges." The parking lot went silent. Madison's live stream viewer count had exploded to over 500 people. Several students had their own phones out now, recording from multiple angles. Jake grabbed Trent's arm. "Dude, shut up. Stop talking." But Trent was too furious to think clearly. "You think you're smart? You think some recording will save you?" He lunged forward, grabbing for Marcus's phone. This time, Marcus did move like a fighter. He sidestepped smoothly, redirecting Trent's momentum so the bigger boy stumbled forward into empty space. It looked effortless, like Trent had simply missed his target. But Sarah, watching from the crowd's edge, recognized the technique instantly, a classic karate evasion that required years of training to execute so flawlessly. Trent spun around, now completely enraged. "You're dead. You hear me? I'm going to." "Going to what?" A new voice cut through the tension like a knife. Everyone turned to see Principal Morrison striding across the parking lot, his face carved from granite. Behind him walked 2 police officers, neither of whom was Trent's uncle. "Going to what, Mr. Walker?" Morrison repeated, stopping at the edge of the circle. "Because I've been watching this entire encounter from my office window, and I'm very interested in hearing what you were going to say next." Trent's face went from red to pale in seconds. Marcus remained perfectly still, his phone still recording, his expression neutral despite the adrenaline screaming through his system. Morrison turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, are you injured?" "No, sir. I'm fine." "Did Mr. Walker or any of his associates physically assault you just now?" "He attempted to grab my phone, sir. But I avoided contact." Morrison nodded slowly, then addressed the crowd. "Everyone who witnessed what just happened, please write down your account and bring it to my office Monday morning. This gathering is dismissed. Now." The crowd dispersed reluctantly, phones still recording, already uploading videos that would go viral before dinner. Madison's livestream had reached 2,000 viewers and counting. One of the police officers stepped forward. "Mr. Walker, we'd like you to come with us to answer some questions about the incident last Monday involving Mr. Chen's locker." "My uncle," Trent started. "Your uncle has recused himself from this investigation due to conflict of interest," the officer said firmly. "These questions are voluntary at this time, but I strongly suggest you cooperate." As they led Trent away, he shot Marcus a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over." Marcus didn't respond. He simply watched them go, his hands steady, his breathing controlled, his mind already calculating next moves. Sarah appeared at his elbow. That was either brilliant or insane. "Maybe both," Marcus admitted, echoing his own words from days before. "What happens now?" Marcus looked at his phone, at the recording that captured everything, at the evidence that would protect him in ways fighting never could. "Now we see if the system my father believed in actually works." But as he walked toward his car, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just started something far bigger than a simple high school conflict. Trent Walker wasn't just a bully. He was a symptom of something deeper, something that wouldn't disappear just because one kid had been smart enough to record everything. The real battle was just beginning, and Marcus wasn't sure he had the weapons to win it. Monday morning felt different. Marcus walked through Lincoln High's halls and noticed the stares had changed. No longer dismissive, they were cautious. Some students nodded respectfully. Others whispered, phones out, rewatching the parking lot video that had been shared 18,000 times. Trent was suspended pending investigation. But Marcus knew this wasn't victory, it was intermission. Sarah found him before first period. "You need to see something." She showed him her phone. The video had hundreds of comments, but she'd screenshot specific ones. "This kid thinks he's a hero, but he's just another troublemaker." Trent was joking around and this snowflake got triggered. Marcus read them silently, his jaw tightening. They're rewriting what happened. Trent's father hired a PR firm. They're flooding social media with counter-narratives. Sarah scrolled further. It gets worse. Anonymous posts claimed Marcus had threatened Trent first, that the recording was edited, that he'd been expelled from his previous school for violence. Each lie carefully crafted to sound plausible. "How do we fight this?" Marcus asked. "We don't. Not alone." Sarah hesitated. "There's someone you need to meet." Jessica Park ran Lincoln High's underground network, a digital archive of every incident the administration tried to bury. She operated from the AV room, surrounded by professional-grade equipment. "David wasn't the first," Jessica explained, pulling up files. 7 students have transferred out after confrontations with Trent over 4 years. 3 filed police reports that mysteriously disappeared. Marcus studied the screen. Trent's father. Him, the police chief, others. They had a system. Jessica's fingers flew across the keyboard. But Principal Morrison's own kid was bullied at another school. Changed him. He's been quietly building a case, waiting for someone brave enough to stand up to Trent on record. That's why he was watching, Sarah realized. Jessica nodded. Your recording gave him what he needed. But Marcus, Trent's family won't let this go. Let them try. Marcus's voice was cold. My father taught me bullies only win when good people stay silent. Over the next week, they worked methodically. Jessica compiled every incident involving Trent. Sarah interviewed victimized students. Marcus documented every threatening message, every attempt to discredit him. But pressure was building. Marcus's mother received calls from concerned parents suggesting Marcus transfer. Anonymous letters with racist slurs appeared in their mailbox. Someone slashed their car tires. Emma started having nightmares again, asking if the bad men were coming back. Maybe I should just leave, Marcus told his sensei during their call. Find another school. And when bullies there push you down, run again. His sensei's voice was firm. Your father didn't die so you could spend your life running. That night, Marcus stared at his father's badge. His phone buzzed. Sarah, emergency. Jessica's laptop stolen from AV room. All backup files gone. Marcus felt ice in his veins. Without that evidence, their case crumbled. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Chen? Detective Williams, State Police. Principal Morrison gave me your number. A pause. Your father and I went through the academy together. He was a good man. I'd like to help finish what you started, but I need everything you have. Marcus closed his eyes. What do you need? Every recording, every screenshot, every statement. And Marcus? Promise me you'll let us handle this legally. I know you have skills that could end this faster, but violence only proves their narrative right. Marcus looked at his father's badge, remembering his last breath. I promise. Good. Trent Walker's family is powerful, but not above the law. We just need to prove it. The DA's conference room felt smaller than it was. Marcus sat between his mother and Detective Williams, facing District Attorney Rebecca Chen, no relation, though the shared surname felt like an omen. Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your evidence, Chen began, sliding a folder across the table. What you've compiled is extraordinary. 15 victims, 4 years of systematic harassment, and clear evidence of institutional cover-up. Richard Walker's attorney, a man named Pearson who looked like he charged by the syllable, leaned forward. My client disputes these characterizations. These are teenagers having typical conflicts, blown out of proportion by an outsider with an agenda. An outsider, Marcus repeated quietly. Is that what you call someone who doesn't want to be assaulted in school hallways? Pearson's smile was condescending. You claim assault, but the video shows my client's son barely touched you. You, however, have documented training in violent martial arts. Who's really the threat here? Detective Williams started to object, but Marcus raised his hand. May I respond? Chen nodded. Marcus pulled out his phone and played a new video. Security footage Jessica had recovered from the school's archived servers, footage that had been deliberately deleted from the main system. It showed Trent and his crew vandalizing lockers, shoving students, stealing phones. Incident after incident that had been erased from official records. This footage was deleted by someone with administrative access, Marcus said calmly. The metadata shows the deletions happened from Principal Anderson's account, the previous principal who retired suddenly last summer. We also have emails between Anderson and Chief Walker discussing how to handle student complaints. Pearson's face went pale. Where did you get that? Anonymous source. But the metadata is authentic. We've had 3 independent forensic analysts verify it. Marcus looked directly at Richard Walker. Your family didn't just enable bullying. You systematically destroyed evidence of crimes committed by minors. That's obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy. Walker slammed his hand on the table. You arrogant little, this is character assassination. My family has served this community for 3 generations. Your family has terrorized this community for 3 generations, Sarah's voice came from the doorway. She walked in carrying a laptop, Jessica right behind her. We've been digging deeper. Found something interesting. Jessica opened the laptop, displaying a spreadsheet. 7 students transferred out over 4 years. We tracked them down. Every single family reported incidents to the school. Every single complaint disappeared. But here's what's interesting. 3 of those families owned businesses that subsequently lost city contracts. 2 had professional licenses mysteriously held up. 1 family's home was condemned by the city inspector right after they threatened to sue. The room went silent. You retaliated against families who spoke up, Chen said, her voice like steel. Using government resources to punish people for reporting crimes against their children. Pearson stood abruptly. This is speculation and hearsay. It's a pattern, Detective Williams interrupted, pulling out his own folder. Once we knew what to look for, The connections became obvious. Every family that complained about Trent Walker experienced unusual difficulties with city services. That's corruption, Mr. Pearson. Federal corruption. Walker's face had gone from purple to gray. This is insane. You're destroying my family over high school drama. No, Marcus said quietly. You destroyed families over your son's inability to behave like a decent human being. You used your power to silence victims. My father died believing the system could work. You proved him wrong every single day you let this continue. The door opened and 2 federal agents entered. Richard Walker, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. As they read Walker his rights, Trent burst into the room, his face wet with tears. Dad? What's happening? For the first time, Walker's arrogance cracked. He looked at his son with something like regret. I'm sorry, Trent. I thought I was protecting you. I was just making it worse. Trent turned to Marcus, and for a moment, he looked like what he was, a scared 17-year-old who'd never learned there were consequences for cruelty. I didn't know. I didn't know they were doing all that. Yes, you did, Marcus said, not unkindly. You knew every time someone transferred. You knew every time a complaint disappeared. You just didn't care because it benefited you. The courtroom hearing 2 weeks later was packed. Every student Trent had victimized sat in the gallery. Local news cameras filled the back row. Marcus testified for 3 hours, presenting evidence with the precision his father had taught him. When the judge finally spoke, her words carried the weight of justice too long delayed. Trent Walker, you are hereby expelled from Lincoln High School and ordered to complete 200 hours of community service, along with mandatory counseling. Your juvenile record will be sealed upon completion, but any future incidents will result in adult prosecution. She turned to Richard Walker, still in custody. As for you, Mr. Walker, your trial on federal charges will proceed. Bail is denied. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Marcus. He gave a brief statement, his voice steady despite exhaustion. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure no other student has to choose between staying silent and being destroyed. My father taught me that justice requires courage. Today proved he was right. David stepped forward, followed by the other victims. Marcus gave us our voices back. That's worth everything. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus noticed Trent watching from a courthouse window, his face pressed against the glass. For a moment, their eyes met. Trent raised his hand in what might have been a wave or an apology. Marcus nodded once, then turned away. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. But at least the foundation of fear had been demolished. 3 months later, Lincoln High looked different. Not physically, the same brick walls, same polished floors, same trophy cases. But something fundamental had shifted in the air, like a storm finally passing after years of gathering darkness. Marcus walked through the hallways without tension in his shoulders for the first time since arriving. Students who once watched in silence now smiled and spoke to him freely. The fear that had governed social interactions had begun to dissolve. Sarah caught up with him before homeroom. Did you hear? The school board approved the new anti-bullying protocol. Every incident gets reported to an independent third party, not just school administration. And they're installing cameras in the blind spots Jessica identified. About time, Marcus said, though he felt a quiet satisfaction. Real change, not just promises. Principal Morrison had implemented weekly assemblies where students could anonymously report concerns. The new policy required all complaints to be forwarded to both school counselors and the district superintendent, preventing any single person from burying evidence. Jessica's documentation website had expanded beyond Lincoln High. 12 other schools across Colorado were now using her system, creating a network of accountability that made institutional cover-ups nearly impossible. Trent returned to school in February, different in ways that went beyond mandatory therapy sessions. He walked the halls quietly, eating lunch alone, no longer surrounded by followers who'd enabled his worst impulses. The crown he'd worn so arrogantly had been stripped away, leaving only a teenager trying to understand who he was without power and privilege protecting him. One afternoon, Marcus found Trent sitting alone in the library, struggling with calculus homework. Their eyes met across the room. Trent looked away first, shame evident on his face. Marcus surprised himself by walking over. You're doing that problem wrong. The formula requires you to factor first. Trent stared at him, confused. Why are you helping me? Because my father taught me that justice isn't about endless punishment. It's about giving people the chance to become better than they were. Marcus paused. Whether you take that chance is up to you. He walked away before Trent could respond, but the next week, he noticed Trent defending a freshman who dropped his books in the hallway. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. David organized a support group for bullying victims that met every Thursday after school. 23 students attended regularly, sharing stories, healing together, learning they weren't alone or weak for having been hurt. Marcus spoke at the first meeting, his voice steady despite the memories it stirred. For a long time, I thought being strong meant never showing vulnerability. My father's death taught me differently. Real strength is standing up when it would be easier to stay silent. It's choosing justice over revenge. It's believing systems can work even when they've failed you before. Emma attended with him sometimes, sitting quietly in the back, no longer waking up with nightmares. She'd made friends at her own school, kids who appreciated her kindness instead of targeting her difference. Detective Williams became a regular presence at Lincoln High, teaching a weekly class on civil rights and legal advocacy. Your generation has tools we never had, he told students. Cameras, social media, instant documentation. Use them responsibly, use them legally, but use them. Silence only protects the guilty. Marcus received letters from students at other schools who'd seen his story go viral. Kids facing their own bullies, asking for advice, finding courage in what he'd done. He responded to each one, document everything. Find allies. Trust the process even when it seems broken. And remember, you're not fighting for revenge. You're fighting so the next person doesn't have to. His own college applications were strengthened by what happened. Essays about courage and justice, recommendations from D.A. Chen and Detective Williams, proof that he'd changed an entire school system. Stanford, Berkeley, and MIT all offered admission with full scholarships. But more important than college acceptance was the moment Sarah showed him a message from a freshman girl. I was going to transfer because of bullying. Then I heard what you did and realized I could fight back legally. I reported everything. They're investigating now. Thank you for showing me I wasn't powerless. That's what it was all for, Marcus said quietly. Not punishing Trent. Showing everyone else they didn't have to be victims. Graduation day arrived with Colorado sunshine and the promise of new beginnings. Marcus wore his father's badge pinned inside his gown, close to his heart where it belonged. Principal Morrison called him to the stage for a special recognition. This year, our community learned difficult truths about itself. Marcus Chen could have responded with violence. Instead, he responded with evidence, courage, and an unwavering belief that justice matters. He changed our school and inspired a movement that's spreading across the state. The auditorium erupted in standing ovation. Marcus saw his mother crying in the front row, Emma beside her beaming with pride. Detective Williams gave him a solemn nod. Even Trent, sitting in the back, was applauding quietly. In his valedictorian speech, Marcus spoke about his father. He taught me that being strong doesn't mean you never get knocked down. It means you get back up, document what happened, and make sure the system works the way it's supposed to. Real power isn't physical strength or family connections. It's evidence, allies, and the courage to speak truth even when silence would be safer. After the ceremony, Trent approached hesitantly. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know, I'm enrolling in community college. Starting over. Learning to be different than I was. Marcus extended his hand. Good luck. Make it count. They shook hands briefly, then went their separate ways. Some wounds healed. Some scars remained. But justice had been served, and that was enough. As Marcus drove away from Lincoln High for the last time, Emma asked, "Do you think Dad would be proud?" Marcus touched the badge inside his gown. "Yeah, I think he would." The best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, it's building a world where their cruelty can't survive. Marcus learned that lesson the hard way, but he learned it well. And somewhere, his father was smiling. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel for more stories about ordinary people choosing extraordinary courage when it matters most.